God for this great opportunity and our pastor here also for giving me this opportunity. మీ అందరికీ ట్రయాంగిల్ గుర్తుంది అనుకుంటున్నాను. గుర్తుందో లేదో మరి నాకు తెలియదు. మర్చిపోయారా లేదంటే చాలా రోజులు అయింది కదా. ఇట్స్ బీన్ లైక్ two months, maybe 1.5 months or something like that, few weeks, right? So we were talking about the triangle, the foundation. We said foundation is faith, right? So my assumption is that we are all really good at that because we talked about it. We saw so many verses. I am hoping మీరు ఇంటికి వెళ్ళి ఆ వర్సెస్ అన్ని చదివారు అనుకుంటున్నాను. And I am hoping that you're continuing in your spiritual investments and getting better at your spiritual life because that's really important. And I want to emphasize on the faith because if there is no faith, there is nothing. Without faith, there is nothing. So if you are still there, please refer to that content and become strengthened in faith because that's the most important thing. It's a foundation. We build a house without proper foundation, eventually it's gonna come down, right? That's of no use. And after that manam prayer gurinchi chusam, right? That's the greatest weapon that you have. Now that you have faith, you want to maintain relationship with God. To maintain relationship with God already gave us all the tools. We don't have to go and buy, right? So the greatest tool that we have to do that is prayer. And I'm hoping you're becoming better at your prayer also. We looked at so many different types of prayers, a short prayer, long prayer, fasting prayers. Where can you pray? We looked at different things and what are some guidelines for prayer. I'm hoping you are referring to that material, you have made notes and you're improving in your prayer. Because if you don't use the right tool, right? మనం జనరల్గా టాయ్స్ కొంటాం and then when we come home we are looking for the screwdriver, right? You need a star but you don't have a star. Then you do a lot of other things. It takes forever. It doesn't work. It's a waste of time. So if your prayer is not good, eventually your faith will also come down. So if you are seeing some problems in your faith or in your spiritual life, that means you are not using the tool that you have been given by God properly and your relationship with God has not been that great. So that's something that we have to constantly check. Okay? Sorry. So unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know if you will be thrilled by it or not so thrilled by it. So we are deviating from that triangle a little bit, from that pyramid a little bit. We will come back to that sometime in the future for sure. But today I wanted to talk about something that's very relevant to us as a congregation because we are our congregation, we have a lot of young couples with kids and we have even the older ones or elder ones with kids and we have auntie here. So this is something that we all can relate to. And దాన్ని ఏమంటారంటే వాక్యము రెండు అంచులు కలిగిన ఖడ్గం అంటారు కదా. సో జనరల్గా whenever I pick something, the way I look at the Bible or anything is more than telling someone else, I am always trying to learn. So when you're preparing for the message and pastor can relate to it, and if you are doing Bible study you can relate to it, it talks to you more than anyone else. So most of the times you will benefit from it than anyone else, but my hope is that some of you will also benefit from it. That's why I always try to give you some content. మీరు ఇంటికి వెళ్ళి కొద్దిగా సమయం తీసి దాన్ని చదివితే if you will be able to do a lot of research on your own. మా చిన్నప్పుడు ఎలా ఉండేదంటే మేబీ యూ మస్ట్ హ్యావ్ ఫర్గాట్ లైబ్రరీస్కి వెళ్ళి చాలా కాంటెంట్ తీసుకుని బోల్డ్ అండ్ బుక్స్ తీసుకుని ఈవెన్ వెన్ ఐ వాజ్ డూయింగ్ మై మాస్టర్స్ ఐ యూస్ టు డూ దాట్. ఒక చిన్న బైబిల్లో ఒక చిన్న క్వశ్చన్ వస్తే వీ యూస్ టు గో టు ద లైబ్రరీ అండ్ గెట్ ఆల్ ద బుక్స్. ఒక 20-30 బుక్స్ ముందు పెట్టుకుని యూస్ టు స్ట్రగుల్ టు గెట్ ద ఆన్సర్స్. But today we are in a day and age where you don't really have to go through all of that. All of that is taken care of. All you have to do is put a question. But I don't know if we have the time or intention or the motivation to put those questions and learn that stuff. But I encourage you, everything that you need to know is already out there. So put that effort and take some time out for God. Okay, so today I want to start with one question. Today's message is about whom do you love the most? So I want all of you to ask yourself, okay, if you had to pick one person in this world, okay, absolutely we love God the most. I know that would be your answer, right? All of us, yes. But yeah, I mean that's a given. We are supposed to do that. That's the first thing. But let's think about what next. Pick one person that you love the most. I want you to do that. And it's just for yourself. You don't have to tell me. Okay? But maybe I'll ask my wife to tell me because I'm hoping that's me, right? So, but generally, just keep it to yourself because it's all inside. It's all about you. It's all about your growth, right? And after the end of the message, I want you to ask that question. I want you to go home and keep asking this question for the rest of the week. Whom do you love the most? And is this biblical? What does the Bible ask me to do? Right? So we're going to look at those things and try to correct those things. So దానికి నేను ఒక చిన్న ఎగ్జాంపుల్తో స్టార్ట్ చేస్తాను. చిన్నప్పుడు when I was a kid, initially I used to hate my parents. మా డాడీ మమ్మీ అంటే అస్సలు ఇష్టం ఉండేది కాదు, ఎందుకంటే ఎప్పుడు హాస్టల్లోనే ఉంటాం, ఎప్పుడు వస్తారు, ఎప్పుడో మధ్యలో వస్తారు, ఒకసారి వస్తారు, దే విల్ గివ్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ థింగ్స్ టు ఈట్ అండ్ దెన్ దే డిసపియర్. We see them and then we are crying and then by the time we are still crying, they already left. Ala undedi. So as we grow older, as the time went by, I started liking them, thinking that okay sarle edo ఒకటి వాళ్ళు కష్టపడి డబ్బులు అయ్యి పంపిస్తున్నారు, మనకి అన్నీ ఉన్నాయి, ఏం కావాలంటే అది కొనుక్కోవచ్చు, మంచి హాస్టల్లో ఉన్నది, ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఈజ్ అవైలబుల్, so they don't bother me much, they don't ask me about the grades. So this is, in a way, I made peace with that and I started liking them. But ఇంకా పెద్ద అయ్యే కొలది I started realizing the sacrifices they made. వావ్, ఇన్ని సాక్రిఫైజెస్ చేశారు వాళ్ళు, ఎన్నో థింగ్స్ వాళ్ళు కొనుక్కోకుండా, వాళ్ళు చేయకుండా. మా డాడీ దగ్గర ఎప్పుడు అంబాసిడర్ కార్ ఒకటి ఉండేది అండ్ దెన్ వీ హ్యాడ్ లైక్ సమ్ స్కూల్ వ్యాన్స్ అండ్ స్టఫ్ బికాస్ వీ హ్యాడ్ స్కూల్స్ అండ్ కాలేజెస్. ఎప్పుడు అప్పట్లో మారుతి కార్ వాజ్ ద బిగ్ డీల్. ఐ మీన్ ఇట్ వాజ్ న్యూ అండ్ ఐ డోంట్ రిమెంబర్ మారుతి జెన్ ఆర్ సంథింగ్. ఐ యూస్ టు టెల్ హిమ్ లైక్, ఈ కార్ ఎందుకు కొనట్లేదు, ఈ కార్ ఎందుకు కొనట్లేదు. బట్ ఐ నెవర్ అండర్స్టూడ్ వై దే వుడెంట్ బై. అండ్ సమ్ అదర్ న్యూ కార్స్ కేమ్, దే ఆర్ నాట్ బయింగ్, వీ స్టిల్ గో ఇన్ దిస్ ఓల్డ్ లైక్ కార్ సంథింగ్. బట్ ఇప్పుడు నాకు అర్థమైంది, అంటే వాళ్ళ కార్ కొనుండొచ్చు, ఇట్స్ నాట్ ఎ బిగ్ డీల్. బట్ 5 పిల్లల్ని డిఫరెంట్ కాలేజెస్లో డిఫరెంట్ స్టేట్స్లో చదివించాలి అంటే ఐఎమ్ షూర్ ఫర్ మీ ఇట్స్ అ స్ట్రగుల్ ఫర్ 2 kids. వీ కెన్ అండర్స్టాండ్. But back in the days, 5 kids, all of us, we studied in different boarding schools in different states across India. So I'm sure those are the sacrifices they made. సో అవన్నీ చూసిన తర్వాత నేను ఇంజనీరింగ్ ఆ టైంకి వచ్చేటప్పటికి మేబీ ఇన్ దోస్ టైమ్స్ ఐ స్టార్టెడ్ లవింగ్ మై డాడ్ అండ్ మామ్ ఎక్స్ట్రీమ్లీ. అంటే ఇంకా ఎంత ఎక్స్ట్రీమ్ అంటే ఈవెన్ బియాండ్ గాడ్. ఇంకా ఫర్ మీ డాడ్ అండ్ మామ్ ఆర్ గాడ్ అనమాట. ఇంకా వాళ్ళ కాళ్ళమే పడి ఇంకా ఎనీథింగ్ ఐ కెన్ డూ ఫర్ దెమ్, ఐ కెన్ గివ్ మై లైఫ్ ఫర్ దెమ్, ఐ కెన్, ఇంకా దెర్ నో లిమిట్స్ అనమాట. అండ్ దట్ కంటిన్యూడ్ ఫర్ అ వెరీ లాంగ్ టైమ్. ఈవెన్ టిల్ టుడే ఐ స్టిల్ లవ్ దెమ్ అ లాట్. బట్ ఈ ప్రాసెస్లో ఏమైందంటే దెన్ ఐ గాట్ మ్యారీడ్. సో మీ అందరూ ప్రాబబ్లీ యూ కెన్ రిలేట్ టు ఇట్, రైట్? పెళ్లి చేసుకున్న తర్వాత దెన్ దెర్ ఇస్ దిస్ కాన్ఫ్లిక్ట్. ఓ పక్కన మా డాడీ మమ్మీ ఉన్నారు, ఓ పక్కన దెర్ ఇస్ దిస్ న్యూ పర్సన్ ఇన్ మై లైఫ్. వాట్ డూ ఐ డూ నౌ? There is God, there is dad and mom, and then there is my wife. As if things were not complex enough, then I have a son, right? And okay, son, I always dreamt of having a daughter. Okay, that was my dream, I don't know. But I was a little bit disappointed. Okay, I had Joey, I wish I had a daughter. But then, to make things even more complicated, I have Joanna. And she loves me a lot, even though I don't do much for her. Actually, whatever I did for Joey, I hardly did anything for Joanna. I hardly give her time or anything, but for some reason she loves me a lot. Now I am like in much more bigger, complex situation. I have all these people competing for my love, for my time. How do I balance all of this, right? One thing I know for sure, manandariki telisindi entante, we have to love God first. That's a given. So there is no confusion over there. So I started digging deeper, trying to understand. So before we go that route, I will bring you back to another different situation. So some of us have been teachers or professors, or you have done some presentations, right? So generally మనం ఒక రూమ్లోకి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు ఏంటంటే the first thing that we do is try to read the room, because you may have 20 slides, but if the room is full of experts, you can't go through 20 slides, because by the time you are in the 5th slide, they'll be annoyed and then they'll dismiss the rest of it. You will be in a very bad situation. But if you have like beginners, let's say you have some interns and you're presenting something, or if you're a professor, you're just coming for the first class, you have to understand who is where. అది అర్థం చేసుకోకుండా మనం చెప్పామనుకోండి, అప్పుడు ఏమవుతుందంటే the message doesn't land, right? At the end of the day, you want the message to land, whether you're teaching, whether you're preaching a sermon, you want the message to land and you want the message to work. So for that, what we will do today is we'll create some baseline. Before we dig deeper into that today's sermon, I want to create a baseline so that we all are at the same line. Right? So some fundamentals, basic things. And the reason I'm saying that is most of us already know these things, but time we are so busy in our life that we forget these things. We heard these sermons many times in our lives, right? So me first handout chusinatleyte there are some things. It says a baseline, right? So before we start reading these references that we have here, I want two people to have mics so references చదివేటప్పుడు ఏంటంటే I'm glad we are doing it, we are reading it, but it has to be audible to everyone, because that way everyone can benefit from it, because the person who is preaching already has gone through that. It's not for just one person, but I want to make sure that everyone is able to read it and everyone is also able to hear it. And ఇంకొక ఎగ్జాంపుల్ చెప్తాను. చిన్నప్పుడు when I was in very small in my church, I was extremely competitive in the sense నేను తప్పించి ఇంకెవరన్నా రిఫరెన్స్ చదివితే ఇంకంతే, the whole week I would be like annoyed అనమాట. Next week I have to be the one person who reads all the references. There is like no other exception. Not just that, in the class I wanted to be first, second was not acceptable. If there are 10 competitions, I wanted to win all the 10 competitions. Even if I don't win one, I would be extremely annoyed. From that phase I've changed a lot. The reason I'm saying this is, it's very good to be competitive like that when it comes to God. You want to be first, but outside of that you don't have to be that competitive. You can just take it easy a little bit. So in the church I want all of you to be like competitive like that. Let's read those verses, let me be the first one, let me beat everyone else. So that will encourage others also, because everyone wanted to beat me. I'll give you one example. మీకు ఎవరికైనా తెలుసో లేదో తెలీదు, కీర్తనలో అన్నిటికన్నా లాంగెస్ట్ కీర్తన, ఎనీవన్ నోస్ వాట్ ఈస్ దాట్? 119. I was the only one in my church who could memorize that and do it as a memory verse, because there was a challenge for 500 rupees. Back in the day 500 rupees was a lot of money, but it was not about the money, it was more about the challenge. So when it comes to God, you have to pick up those challenges and God will help you. When you read the messages, when you read the verses, it will help you grow. It will help the church as well, it will help the pastors, and it will help the congregation, and it will set an example. So I want you to continue to do that. I know all of us are already doing it, right? So I'm hoping two people have mics and you're able to read these things. So this is for the baseline. So it's not really today's sermon. So we will quickly go through these references. So ఇక్కడ చూసినట్లయితే మన హ్యాండ్అవుట్లో there are three things. There is pleasing God, and then there is pleasing people, everyone else, and then there is the third interesting thing is pleasing ourselves. So I always used to think early on in when I was learning and doing all these things, I always thought there are two categories. There's pleasing God and pleasing others. I didn't know that there was pleasing ourselves also. But those are the three categories that we have here. Pleasing God we are very familiar with, right? We'll read some references. Pleasing people, yeah, we are familiar with that as well. We do some things to please people, sometimes happily, sometimes not so happily, right? And for different reasons. And pleasing self, so we'll look at it. So can someone read the first one, Galatians chapter 1 verse 10? And just and before reading, I want you don't have to go at a super fast pace, because it's all for us to comprehend. Read at a nice pace so that everyone can follow and understand what we are reading. Please.
God called the dry ground land, and the gathered watered he called seas, and God saw that it was good.
Galatians chapter 1 verse 10.
ఇప్పుడు నేను మనుషుల దయను సంపాదించుకొని చూచుచున్నానా, దేవుని దయను సంపాదించుకొని చూచుచున్నానా? నేను మనుషులను సంతోషపెట్టగోరుచున్నానా? నేను ఇప్పటికీ మనుషులను సంతోషపెట్టువాడనైతే క్రీస్తు దాసుడను కాకయే పోదును.
Thank you, sister. Right. So here it's very clear. If we want to please God, We have to prioritize pleasing God first. We have to put the people aside. సో మన కాన్స్టెంట్ మన లైఫ్లో ఎప్పుడు ఒక కాన్స్టెంట్ థింగ్ ఉండాల్సింది ఏంటంటే, జనరల్గా మనం ఏం చేస్తామంటే, ఇది మనకి మంచిదా, లేదంటే మన మనసుకు మంచిదా అనిపించిందా, లేదంటే మనకి నచ్చిన వాళ్ళతో మంచిగా ఉంటాం, నచ్చిన వాళ్ళతో మంచిగా ఉంటాం, లేదంటే సమ్టైమ్స్ వీ లైక్ అవర్ మేనేజర్, వీఆర్ వెరీ గుడ్ విత్ దట్ మేనేజర్, బట్ వీ డోంట్ లైక్ ద మేనేజర్, వీ టేక్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ఇన్ ఎ నెగిటివ్ వే. Because we are still thinking we are just thinking about the circumstance and the people around us. But we have to think in every circumstance, what will be pleasing to God. మన మనుషులను సంతోషపెట్టాలా, దేవుని సంతోషపెట్టాలి. దిస్ కాన్ఫ్లిక్ట్ విల్ ఆల్వేస్ బీ దేర్. మనం చేసే ప్రతి దాంట్లోని ఈ కాన్ఫ్లిక్ట్ ఉంటుంది. సో మనం ఏం చేయాలంటే, ఒక్కసారి టేక్ ఎ పాజ్ అండ్ థింక్ ఫర్ ఎ బిట్. నేను ఈ పని చేయడం వలన మనుషుల్ని సంతోషపెడుతున్నానా, దేవుణ్ణి సంతోషపెడుతున్నానా? ఒకవేళ ఇఫ్ యు ఆర్ ప్లీజింగ్ గాడ్, డోంట్ వరీ అబౌట్ ద పీపుల్. ఇట్స్ స్టిల్ ఫైన్, బికాస్ అట్ ద ఎండ్ ఆఫ్ ద డే ఆర్ గోల్ ఈజ్ టు ప్లీజ్ గాడ్. ఒక్కొక్కసారి ఏమవుతుందంటే, అందరూ చూస్తూ ఉంటారు. నేను చిన్న ఎగ్జాంపుల్స్ చెప్తాను. లెట్స్ సే మై ఫ్రెండ్స్ వెన్ దే యూస్ టు గో టు తిరుపతి ఆర్ సంథింగ్, దే వుడ్ బ్రింగ్ some prasadam from that and some idol or something together with it. When we were in engineering, I was the only Christian in the entire college in my class and everything. They used to bring it. It was such an awkward situation. If I say no, it will look really bad, right? And then we will become like alone, because everyone will alienate you. But what will you do in that circumstance? Okay, are you going to please God, or are you going to please others? Because it's easy, just accept it, throw it away, whatever it is. But do you have the courage to say, sorry, I'm a Christian, I can't do this? నేను జస్ట్ ఒక ఎగ్జాంపుల్ చెప్పాను. మన లైఫ్లో బోల్డ్ అండ్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్స్ ఉంటాయి. పీపుల్ మైట్ కాల్ యూ ఫర్ పూజ, పీపుల్ మైట్ కాల్ యూ ఫర్ లాట్ ఆఫ్ అదర్ థింగ్స్ దట్ క్రిస్టియన్స్ డోంట్ డూ, ఆర్ వాట్ ఎవర్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ఇన్ యువర్ లైఫ్. బికాజ్ ఒక్కొక్క లైఫ్లో ఒక్కొక్క సినారియోస్ ఉంటాయి, సిచ్యువేషన్స్ ఉంటాయి, అవి మనకు తెలియదు. కానీ మీరు ఎప్పుడు ఏం ఆలోచించాలంటే, నేను ఇది చేయడం వలన ఎవరిని ప్లీజ్ చేస్తున్నా, నా చుట్టుపక్కల ఉన్న పీపుల్నా, లేదంటే మీ బ్రదర్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, సిస్టర్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, రిలేటివ్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, మీ మేనేజర్స్ అవ్వచ్చు, లేదా దేవుణ్ణి ప్లీజ్ చేస్తున్నాను. So take this as a guiding principle for everything. It will help us grow in Jesus and help us grow spiritually so that we can become a better person. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4. Anyone please?
On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts.
Thank you. Again the same thing. Multiple references, but the message is the same. We are trying to please God. And we will not read all the references here. That's enough for pleasing God. So we do understand that pleasing God is very important. And God clearly tells us, right? In the Bible, the word clearly tells us that. So let's look at pleasing people. If someone can look at Romans chapter 15, verse 1 through 3.
We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not please ourselves. Each of us should please our neighbors for their good, to build them up. For even Christ did not please himself, but as it is written, the insults of those who insult you have fallen on me. For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through the endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope.
Thank you. So what this verse is talking about is we have to please others. Why do we have to please others? To build them. We have to please others to build them. If you have an opportunity to please someone and build them for the right purpose, always please them. And you have a verse here. If someone can read 1 Corinthians 10:33 as well. If someone can give the handouts to the folks who just came in.
అన్ని విషయంలో యందు నాకు స్వాతంత్రం కలదు, కానీ అన్నీయు చేయదగినవి కావు. అన్నిటి యందు నాకు స్వాతంత్రం కలదు, కానీ అన్నీయు క్షేమాభివృద్ధి కలుగజేయవు.
1 Corinthians 10:33. 33, please.
1 Corinthians 10:33. Even as I please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved.
Yeah, see, you're always thinking about your neighbor, what works for them, what is good for them. So this is about pleasing people. But then there is a good way to please other people, and then there is a bad way to please other people. Like if you take the same example that I was talking about in the engineering college scenario, when someone gives you that, whatever that you're not supposed to do as a Christian, right? In that scenario, you could easily please people, but then that would be for the wrong reasons. God is saying, please people to lift them up in faith. So you have to understand, every time when you are presented with a scenario, because every moment that we have is a scenario that is presented for us. And how do we present ourselves? How do we react? How do we interact with others? And are we taking the guidance from the Word, from the Bible, or are we just acting by ourselves? Most of the times we will be acting by ourselves, but this is a good opportunity. God is reminding us that we have guidelines. We have clear guidelines in the Bible, how we present ourselves to this world, right? So one last example on that one, pleasing people. John chapter 12, verse 43.
John chapter 12, verse 43. For they love the praise of men more than the praise of God.
Sorry, can you read that again, please?
43.
John chapter 12, verse 43.
43. For they that praise of men more than praise of God.
Yeah. Can someone also read in Telugu if you can?
వారు దేవుని మెప్పు కంటే మనుషుల మెప్పును ఎక్కువగా అపేక్షించిరి.
Yeah. So here, what people are doing is, sometimes we always take the easiest path, right? As humans, we are designed that way, unfortunately. Right? Easy path is there is no conflict, but easy path doesn't always mean it's the right path. Easy path most of the times is a people-pleasing path, and it's not a God-pleasing path. But as Christians, we always have to pick Jesus. What does Jesus want us to do? What does God wants us to do? Right? So two things are very clear. We always have to think about pleasing God first, and we also have to please people for their benefit, not for our benefit. Right? If you're pleasing someone, if someone is going through a bad day, you stop by and say, yeah, you're looking good, you're looking great, don't worry about it. This is an awesome day. This is Christmas time. Let's be together. Let's be happy. You're doing it for their good, not for your good. Then absolutely, right? Go ahead and do it. Let's look at the last one. So for the folks who came in a little later, just wanted to set. So we're just looking at a baseline before we start the sermon, so that this is a good example, right? Someone comes in, they have no clue, right? So don't take anything wrong. I'm just like, we just talked about it. Someone comes in, they have no clue, but we are already so deep into this thing, so we are really clear. And they might go for the next half hour thinking, what is this guy talking about, right? So we don't want that. As if you are in your presentation, if you're preaching, whatever it is, right, you want to set a baseline so that everyone is at the same page, and then you build on that baseline. So what we are trying to do is, before we start the sermon, we are building a baseline here. We're talking about three categories: pleasing God, pleasing ourselves, and pleasing others. This serves as a fundamental baseline for us, and then we will go into the sermon. Okay? Yeah, pleasing self. And if someone can read Romans chapter 15, verse 1.
We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not be pleased ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. That's enough. We should not be pleasing ourselves. And if you look at the Bible, right, pleasing self, there are so many references. Obviously, I didn't give everything here. And all of those references are in a negative way. This is the least important one. First, we have to please God. We have to please others for their own benefit. And finally, it comes to us. And in a very restrained way. It never says, there are a lot of references, right? Go ahead and eat everything you want, drink everything you want, marry, you'll live forever. Is that what the word says? All right. We don't know when we're going to go. There is always a restraint. Control yourself. Be good. Don't do this. Don't do that. It's very restrictive when it comes to pleasing ourselves. Right? Let's read a few more. Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Anyone?
Luke 9:23.
And if you're going to be this slow, I'm going to try and use ChatGPT or something. We need a mic or someone who has. Okay.
9:22.
9:23. Luke chapter 9, verse 23.
మరియు ఆయన అందరితో ఇట్లనను, ఎవడైనను నన్ను వెంబడింపగోరిన ఎడల తను తాను ఉపేక్షించుకొని ప్రతిదినము తన సిలువను ఎత్తుకొని నన్ను వెంబడింపవలెను.
Yeah. If you want to follow Jesus, what should you do? You should just forget yourself, right? The disciples were fishing. What did God say? Don't worry about the fishing part. Come with me. I'm going to make you millionaires. I'm going to show you how to invest. There's a lot of real estate stuff. There is this cryptocurrency. I'm going to make things better for you. Right? God didn't promise that. God didn't say you'll become rich. God said, just follow me. Leave everything. The richest man comes to Jesus and says, I've been doing everything. What do you want me to do? I want to be in your kingdom. So it's like, leave everything, give everything away. What did he do? Did he give everything away? No, he didn't. He was like, oh my God, this is not going to happen. Right? So many times we are not willing to part ways with the things that God does not want us to be with. Instead, we are very self-indulgent, whatever that indulgence of yours is, right? So make sure you are paying attention, that you are not too self-centered about yourselves, because God does not want us to do that. God is saying, don't be in a rush to please yourselves, right? So this is the baseline. What God tells us to do is, in everything that you do, please Jesus. So every scenario that you are presented with, no matter how complex, if you are having a tough time what to do or how to make a decision, stop and ask, would this please God, or would this please others, or would this please myself? And then make your decisions, right? And if you have to please others, do it for the benefit of others. And if you have to please yourself, that should be your least priority. And be very restrained about it. Okay? So that's the baseline. The baseline itself felt like a sermon? Maybe? Yes? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. So today's sermon is about whom do you love the most in your life? Right? You have to pick one person that you love the most in your life. And after you pick that one person, right, this is going to be, you don't have to show it to me, just like keep it in your head or write on a paper, whatever works for you, right? Write that person's name. And after the sermon, you're going to revisit that. And if you got a good answer, then that's fine. That's great. You're doing great. You can do. You can focus on other things. If you didn't, then it's a time to see how you can change that. Because change doesn't happen in one day. It takes time. Takes time and effort to do that. So we already read this Genesis chapter 2:24. If someone can read that, Genesis chapter 2:24.
కాబట్టి పురుషుడు తన తండ్రిని తన తల్లిని విడిచి తన భార్యను హత్తుకొనును, వారు ఏక శరీరమై ఉందురు.
Thank you. So generally this verse is something that's read when we are getting married, right? That's the only time mostly we hear about it, and after that we don't pay much attention, right? Because now that we are done, let's move on. Tell me other stuff. We already did that, right? So maybe there are some youngsters who haven't gotten married yet, but so they will hear this when you guys are getting married, right? So a man and a woman come together and you become united in flesh, right? That's very clear. This is from the Old Testament. So let's look at the New Testament. Can someone read Matthew chapter 19 verse 5 and 6?
ఇందు నిమిత్తము పురుషుడు తన తల్లిదండ్రులను విడిచి తన భార్యను హత్తుకొనును, వారిద్దరూ ఏక శరీరముగా ఉందిరని చెప్పినని మీరు చదవలేదా? కాబట్టి వారికను ఇద్దరు కాక ఏక శరీరంగా ఉన్నారు గనుక దేవుడు జతపరిచిన వారిని మనుషుడు వేరుపరచకూడదని చెప్పాను.
Thank you, sister. Right? So దేవుడు జతపరిచిన వారిని మనుషులు విడదీయకూడదు. So this is a confirmation again in the New Testament, right? So there is this Old Testament thing that was brought up when Jesus was there, and then there is a confirmation saying that yes, it is still valid even till today. It is still valid, right? So నేను ఈ రీసెంట్గా ఒక క్వశ్చన్ వచ్చింది నాకు. సో someone asked me this question. So, I mean, probably a lot of you must have gone through this also. So now I have a daughter, and I have wife, and I have my mom. So someone asked me to prioritize this in an order, right? So whom do I pick? So there are different answers. People pick like different answers or doing some research. So I'll give you some of the answers, and then I'll tell you what I thought. So someone picked daughter first, mother next, and wife last. And that person's reasoning was, who knows, wife could change. So, because the other two are going to be constant, right? Because maybe you get married to someone else, and you have another wife. That's still going to be number 3, right? Someone else said it's going to be daughter first, then wife, and then mother. Then the reasoning was that my mother didn't care much about me. She loves other siblings more than I, so I don't really have that much connection. So that's okay. My daughter, because she really loves me a lot. When I go home, she's the one who comes take care of me. She provides me everything. She asks me how was the day, and she gives me food and all of that. Whereas my wife, she hardly cares. So that's fine. Each of us might have a different answer. So keep it to yourself, right? Don't tell your wife or your husband. Okay? I just gave you a wife example, but this could be the same thing for the husbands also, right? Right? If you have a husband, if you have a father, and if you have a son, it's still the same question. What is your order? Right? So that's fine. So keep your order. Again, this is the second question. Don't forget. Okay? There's going to be a quiz later on. Right? This is the second question. So make sure you remember, because you're going to answer this to yourself. Right? But what does the Bible say about it? Because a lot of times you have most of these answers in the Bible. Growing up, I think I must have mentioned this. I read a lot of books. Like I must have read like thousands of books, and I'm constantly in that quest of what other book can I read, because I feel like knowledge is infinite, and the more you know, the more better. But the more you read, you understand that you hardly know anything. Right? Generally, people who read a little bit might think they know a lot, but generally people who read a lot will know that they know almost nothing. So I used to tell my dad only has Bible, that's it. We don't have any other books in our at home. When I go to my dad's brother's home, there are thousands of books. So I always wanted to go to their home, and I wanted them to adopt me because they had music instruments, they had books, so everything that I wanted, it was all fun. Whereas at my home there was nothing. It was like my dad and mom, who were always angry, who were always very strict, would not allow us to do anything, right? So I wanted to read all those books, and then I would go to dad and say like, why don't you buy some books? We have nothing at home, only Bible. And why do you always constantly read that Bible? Like, message is on Sunday, why do you start on Monday? You could start on Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday, because you've been doing this for many years. He would tell me that everything that I need, I have it here. At that time I didn't believe it. But if you ask me now, I would agree to his answer. It takes time for everyone to get there. But trust me, the more knowledge you gain, eventually you will get to a point where you will realize that everything that you learned or everything that you know is nothing compared to what you have, the Bible, which usually catches dust in our homes. Right? Everywhere you go, there is a Bible, but usually it's not read. But there are so many interesting books, the bestsellers, millions of copies sold. Even Joel Austin writes a book, it's sold, millions of people read it. But do we read the Bible? Right? So there is a lot of everything, every question that you have answers in the Bible. So I encourage you to spend time. Right? When you are younger, spend time. Because people always put it away, in my retirement I'm going to do this. Right? No, not in your retirement. Start as early as you can. Right? So we talked about this, and the question on the handout is, what's the most important relationship in this world? That's another question for you, right? Whom do you love the most? And what is the second one? Anyone?
Order.
Sorry?
Order. Priority.
Priority? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just testing, just making sure that you're tagging along. Because I told you, right, our attention span is only 90 seconds. So I get it if you don't remember something. So don't worry about it. I am also the same. Maybe yours is 90 seconds, mine could be 9 seconds. So mine wanders a lot, right? So that's understood. That's okay. Right? So that's why I keep asking the same question multiple times. So generally, everyone has the answer differently, right? For some people, maybe parents are important, right? Because of their situations and scenarios. Particularly if you ask kids, they would always pick parents, right? So because parents are the ones who are providing them everything, this is no-brainer kind of an answer. But once you are like in your teens and maybe a little bit more, then the answers might change, right? Then it could be your boyfriend or your husband or your daughter, son, or uncle, aunt. It could be a different thing. It keeps changing, it keeps evolving. But it's very important to understand the order that God meant for us, right? And that order is defined in the Bible. So today I want to look at that order. So if someone were to ask you that same question, so by the way, that second one everyone missed. The question was about that, right? The order, right? So what would be your 1, 2, 3, right? So the Bible clearly gives your 1, 2, 3. 1 is, who is 1? We all know the answer, right? God is number 1 always. So that's pretty straightforward. Number 2 is always going to be your spouse, right? No questions asked. And if that number 2 is not your spouse, whether it could be your wife, it could be your husband, right? So they come before your children, they come before your parents, right? So if you're making certain decisions in your life, whatever those decisions are, everyday decisions, always ask this question to yourself, right? Would this please Jesus? Right? Now you have covered your major things, right? God is your number 1. Then think about your spouse. So we should not be doing anything that will not be liked by our spouse, right? So that is something that you also have to think about. And why do we have to worry about our spouse so much? Because again, these are all interrelated, right? What did Jesus say? Always please me. And then Jesus said, prioritize your spouse. And if you don't prioritize your spouse, that means you're again breaking the rule 1, because they're all interrelated. You break 2, you break 1 as well. You can't love Jesus and then not love your wife. If you don't love your wife or you don't love your husband, then you automatically don't love Jesus, because it doesn't work like that. You can't say I love Jesus, but that's the only relationship that I have. Everyone else, it's not going to work, right? Because God gave us clear guidelines. You have to really care about your spouse. So this is great. Loving spouse is beautiful and awesome. When I first met my wife, we hardly spoke for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes or something, and we were in love. It was all good, awesome, everything as I said before, right? But as soon as we had our son, that's it. Everything changed. And then I was telling the same thing, right? And then we had our daughter. Now it's like we don't know who we are. I'm just telling you the truth. Sometimes I have an identity crisis. I'm like, who am I? What am I doing in this house? Right? What is my role here? So no offense, because I'm sure we all can relate to it, right? I'm giving examples because we can relate to it. But what does Bible say about it? When we are having crisis, when we are having situations like this, turn to the Bible and read the word and use all these different kinds of searches, right? You have a lot of tools at your disposal. You have AI tools where you just ask a question, it will give you like as many answers as you want, as many references as you want. You don't really have to start reading from the beginning and trying to figure out where it is, right? Give a context and you'll get great answers, and then dig deeper, right? So if spouse is the most important thing, right, how do we ensure that we are pleasing God by following that? And what are the general things that happen in our life that distract us or that lead us into a path where we are not doing that, where we are moving away from our spouse? Because a lot of marriages, they say like they call this honeymoon period, right? The first few years are great, and after that it starts dropping off, and after that eventually we don't know, right? It's like two people living under the same roof and probably taking care of the kids. And those things can be fixed. We have solutions in the Bible to fix those things and become better, right? So I want us to look at some of the common conflicts. If you look at our handouts that I gave you, I put some common conflicts here and some examples as well. I took some real world examples and some Bible references. Obviously, we will not have time to go through everything. We will look at few of these things. Some of, and I was talking about this, right? If you look at the example 1, after a child is born, I was just giving you my scenario right there, right? And I said one spouse. It says unintentionally. It's never intentional. Most of the things happen in our life unintentionally. No one would go out of the way and say like, I'm going to hate my wife from tomorrow, I'm going to hate my husband from tomorrow. It doesn't work like that, right? It gradually happens in the background, and eventually you reach a point where you are at that scenario, right? Often starts unintentionally. And most of the times this stress usually happens when you have that first kid, right? And then continues to build from there. And most of us can relate to it because we all have kids here. I know some of you are not married, but this is a great thing to remember for the future, right? You can relate to it as well, or you can relate to it as a kid, right? So here, what happens is you will start sharing your emotions with your children. And I've seen this many times, right? Whether it could be a father or a mother. Father comes home and instead of talking to the wife, he'll be like talking to the son or daughter, like, oh, I had a bad day, I had this, I had that. The wife is busy doing something else. And I don't know if this is happening in your life. I'm not saying it is. But some of these scenarios might be happening in your life because of the stress that the family is going through. It could be the kids, it could be the responsibilities. But always remember, the word clearly says, prioritize your spouse. In this world, everything comes after the spouse, no matter what you're doing. So prioritize your spouse. Ensure that you're always doing that. Only after your spouse's needs are met, you start thinking about the kids, because that's the order that the Bible has described for us, right? If you're doing that, that's great. But if you're not doing that, if you're neglecting your spouse, today is the time to correct that, right? And I asked you that question, whom are you loving? I don't know, some of us, we might be loving money. I love my car, I'm telling you, right? But am I loving the car more than my wife? Those are the questions that we have to answer. Each of us might be loving something else, right? We have a lot of things in this world to distract us. So many things. Some people love to travel, some people... So I know a couple, the husband loves to travel a lot and wife wants to stay home. So they have a perfect solution. The wife stays home, the husband travels. They're perfectly fine, they meet once in 2 years. Because he wants to travel all the time. Wife doesn't like to travel, she stays home, takes care of the kids, and the husband continues to travel. And these are Christians that I'm talking about. I'm not giving you some other examples from outside. So you have to understand, what does the word say? So there are 3 aspects of a relationship for the wife and husband. Usually we always pay attention to the one aspect, which is physical aspect. Right? So we always think marriage is about 2 people coming together and having kids. Right? So most of the times people think that this is what marriage is about. When I was new in the US, someone asked me, do you have kids? I said, I'm not married. Like, they're not connected. I'm like, oh, okay. But at least in India they are connected. I didn't know that, right? So marriage, we think marriage is just for kids, right? But there are other aspects of a marriage. You have to be physically united, you have to be mentally united, and you have to be spiritually united. There are 3 aspects. So you have to look at all these aspects. Okay, you're physically united, you're together, you're staying together. Okay, you are intimate, you have kids, you had a great life, physically you're perfectly fine, that's great. Then comes the mental union. How are your thoughts? Wife has different dreams, husband has different dreams. They have different perspective towards life or everything else that they're doing. Are you able to come to union together from a mental perspective? Right? Do you have common goals? Do you have common dreams? Have you started thinking about everything together? Because you're one flesh, you're no longer 2. Most of the times we start fighting with our spouse on things that we don't agree. But remember, you're one, you're not 2. Bible clearly says, we looked at the New Testament, we looked at the Old Testament. You're not two people in one house, you're just one. So when you come home, take care of yourself first. Who is yourself? You and your spouse. And then once you have catered to that, then take care of the kids. Then take care of extended family. Then take care of family, anything else that you have to take care of. But are you doing that today? I don't know, maybe you are. If you are, that's great. But if you are not, you have to start doing that. Because you're not pleasing Jesus. If you're not doing that, you're actually displeasing Jesus. You're already broken the first. And if you're doing all of this and praying, it goes nowhere. Because the connection is lost. Jesus asks you to do something, you're not doing that, and you're continuing to pray. Right? That's not going to work. Now let's look at, so here on every example, I gave how the spouse feels. In your scenario, I don't know, it could be a wife or a husband. How do you feel? Do you still feel that your wife or husband is the closest person in your life? If you have time, if you have 10 minutes of spare time, do you want to spend it with your wife or your husband, or you just want to disappear from there and do something else? Whether it is Shorts, YouTube, Instagram, whatever works for you. Right? So if that's the case, then this might apply to you. And there is a lot of learning here. Can someone read this second reference? I already noted it here, but still. Genesis we already read, so we're not going to do that. That's okay. Basically what I kind of summarized it over there. Strength comes from unity. Right? When you think yeah, thank you. Yeah, right. There is strength in unity. When wife and husband come together, you're much more stronger. You don't know that. God designed it like that. But unless you explore that design, you will always think it is faulty. Because you haven't really explored that. You just think, you make assumptions. But God has designed it like that. So come together. Become together in flesh, from a mental perspective, from how you're thinking, and finally from a spiritual perspective as well. You have to be together because you're one. Right? And when you are one, usually kids who come from strong marriages where spouses love one another and create that environment at home, they learn it from us. So you're not only doing what is good for you and what Jesus asked us to do, but you're also creating that future generations. Because kids don't learn just like that. They look at you, they learn from what you're doing, not from what you're saying. Right? And you have to set that example. If you have a daughter, she has to learn how she should function when she becomes a wife for someone, because that's going to happen, right? Same thing with the son. Are you raising your son the right way when he becomes a husband? Is he going to create a functional family or a dysfunctional family? These are the responsibilities that we have. We have to take care of them, we have to nurture them so that they can see how the family operates. If they don't see it, right? If you have a dysfunctional family where a wife doesn't love the husband and always puts him down, and then the daughter or son will think that, oh, okay, this is how it's going to work. You can't expect them to have something better because that's what they have seen their entire life. But that's okay, we can't go back and change our parents. But we are here, we are present, we can change ourselves. Right? We can put effort to change ourselves, not only for our benefit, first to please God, and second, to ensure we pass on these values to the next generation through our kids. Right? Yeah. Time replacement. This is quick, right? When you have free time, what are you doing? Are you giving all your free time for your kids? Because sometimes nowadays families become kid-centered. As I mentioned before, losing the identity. It becomes more about the kids and not about the wife and husband anymore. We don't have time for one another. We are so busy. Not on purpose, but there are needs. And in the US, as you know, we have to do everything, right? We have to wear so many hats. We become a dishwasher, and then we become like a cleaner, like so many roles, right? We are doing everything. When I went to India, like recently, we had a visit to India. I stayed there for 9 months, and I used to get annoyed at everyone. Literally, I was standing in a line, trying to get my car from a valet, and someone else comes and cuts me off and goes and gives that ticket to the other guy. I'm telling him, hey, I'm in the line. He's like, where is the line? I don't see a line. I'm like, yeah, if you open your eyes, you'd see a line, right? If you cut it off, how would you see that? And it got extreme. The person who would throw the trash, like person household help, they'd open the trash and then they put it outside and the trash is everywhere. I'm like, is this how you do your job? So I figured out I can do a better job at cooking, at cleaning, at driving the car, at like literally doing everything. And when I went to India, I felt like, what are these guys doing? Right? In India, fortunately, we have so much help, so there is time for the husband and wife. Here, we have no help. We have to take care of everything. And if we miss something, then it's going to be a disaster. If you miss paying a bill, that's going to be a problem for your credit history, right? It's going to stay there for 7 years. So everything you have to be meticulous. Even in this busy life, how do you create the priority for your spouse, right? Because that is what would please Jesus, right? Okay. So look at one thing in each of these handouts, because we will not have time to go through everything. But when you go home, I want you to pay emphasis to how the spouse feels, because these are actually real stories. I obviously couldn't put everything here. These are real Christian stories where people have talked about how they felt. And mind you, these are like very young couples. You're not talking about people who have reached 70 and then they're reflecting on their life. No. These are people who are going through these scenarios right now in their lives. Right? Because everything looks greener from the outside. You look at a couple, they're very happy, smiling and laughing. You might think like, oh my God, their life is wonderful. Trust me, no one's life is wonderful. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is going through a different struggle, right? But we have solutions here. The Bible gives us solutions if you pay attention and if you are putting effort to learn from it and change your life, right? So creating intentional couple time is very important. And if you don't do that, your marriage will suffer, and that's not good. So can someone read this 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3 to 5?
The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer, then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, sister. So, I'm sorry, thank you, wife, I should say, not sister, right? So, yeah, thank you. So, this is also very important, right? We become so busy in our lives, and we forget that we are wife and husband. The physical aspect that I'm talking about, this particular verse talks about being intimate with one another. That is also very important. We talked about 3 aspects of union. We talked about physical union, we talked about mental union, and we talked about spiritual union. Generally in marriages, what happens is it starts with a physical union. Somewhere in between mental union, most of the people don't agree, like you do your stuff, I do my stuff. And then maybe eventually when you're retired, when you're 70, 75, closer to death or something, then you get this, from a miracle happens, and then you become like the spiritual union, right? That's the tendency that we see. But right from the beginning of the marriage, you are supposed to have all these 3 unions come together. That's when you will have the marriage that God intended for all of us, right? And I don't know how you're doing in each of these 3 areas, but if there is an area to improve, if there is an area for you to get better as a wife or as a husband, I strongly encourage you to go through these and read these things, right? Here I'm talking about I'm only existing as a co-parent. And we see this a lot of families struggling because they just feel they're a co-parent, right? There is this priority conflict, but you can read about it, right? It's how does the spouse feel here? It says, I come second or third in my own marriage. Many times this happens. We say, we read the Bible, everyone reads the same verse, right? Who is the head of the family? The husband. God first, and after that, in the family, the husband, right? Is supposed to lead, but are we leading? Who is leading our family? In every family, it's a different person leading. Some families, wife is leading, some family, husband is leading, some families, no one is leading. Some families, kids are leading, right? But what does the Bible say? If you are a man and God has given you a certain role and a responsibility, you're supposed to take it up. And if you're a woman, if you're a wife, go through the word, understand what is your role in the marriage, and ensure you're doing that not to please your husband, right? Unfortunately, there is no, you always read that disclaimer, right? Is there any disclaimer? It says like, when the wife is good, make sure you love her. When the husband is good, make sure you take care of her and take care of him and respect him. Only do this. There is no conditional love anywhere. God says, submit yourself. He said both ways, right? Wife, submit yourself. We just read the verse. To your husband. And husband, also submit yourself to the wife. It's together. It's one flesh. There is no one greater than the other. You're together. You're one in marriage. Right? So don't compete with one another on anything. Because if one of you wins, the other person doesn't lose. You both lost. One person cannot win in a marriage. You either win together or lose together. Because you have come together. God has created this union for you. You are one. Think one, do one, be one. And if kids see that conflict in you, it's going to be like really, really bad. You're going to see the consequences for the rest of your life. Not just in your life, but in your kids' lives as well. Because kids always use that against us. They'll take sides. Sometimes in some families you'd see like wife and son are together and then dad is like, he has to just not show his face anywhere, right? He's just like in the background somewhere. Or sometimes it's the father and the daughter. They make all the decisions. Wife is like somewhere. She doesn't have a voice because she's not supposed to speak. What do you know? God didn't say, only if you get an educated wife who knows everything, then. God didn't say that, right? If God brought you both together, it doesn't matter what you know. It doesn't matter what she knows. You are in that role. You are a husband, she's a wife. You have to love her. She has to love you. Yeah? So please pay attention to that. We talked about this, right? Loyalty shift. And in Matthew 12:25, it clearly says, divided houses always fall. If your house is divided, this is the time to correct it. Don't let anyone be an interruption in your marriage. God said, I got you both together. No one should separate you. Did he say no one except your dad and mom? No one except your kids? No one except your brothers? No. No one should come in between you. No one should create that distance between a wife and husband. And we have to be mindful as well, right? If we are talking to a couple, we have to be mindful that whatever we are doing will only bring them together, but not separate them, right? We as Christians, because why would we do that? Because it would please God, right? So in all our interactions, we should ensure that we are pleasing God. And it starts at home. That's why God created this structure. Everything starts at home. And sometimes we are in a rush to go outside and change the world. No, let's not be in a rush to change the world. Let's first start at home. And let's start with us. How is your relationship with Jesus? Is your relationship good? Now let's work on the relationship with your spouse. Ensure you bring it to a good level. Maybe you're in orange, you're in red, you're in green. I don't know what color right now. What does your marriage look like? But I want us to focus on our marriages, right? And if you're not doing any of these things and just let the time go by, it will not fix by itself. I'll give you an example. There was this world's fastest runner who was in South Africa. He was training every single day for 8 hours in the same ground where someone else was also doing the same 8 hours of training. One happened to be the world champion. The other one is still running in the same ground. Why? Because no retrospective, right? How do you make yourself better? By making sure you're looking back and changing things. If you don't change anything, and if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, yesterday we woke up, we went through the day, today we woke up, we go through the day, tomorrow we will wake up and we'll go through the day, nothing changes. And eventually a time will come when your time has come. And then when you look back, oh, I wish I would have started then. You always wait for the perfect time to start, but there is no perfect time. You have to start today. And I'm not giving you a lot of tasks, right? I'm just giving you one simple thing, one thing to take away. From today onwards, make sure you prioritize your spouse. And that is according to the God's will. That is by design. And ensure you do that both ways, right? It's wife to the husband and husband to the wife. And ensure you are addressing these 3 aspects of your marriage and come together. Physical affection, we talked about it, right? Sometimes I've seen couples where you're depriving the other spouse of the physical needs, right? And that's not good as per the Bible. If someone can read Hebrews chapter 13 verse 4.
Marriage should be honored by all, and marriage kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.
Thank you. That's good, right? So that is very self-explanatory. And if that is happening in your marriage, you have to change that. That's not good, right? It's not pleasing Jesus. And if you look at 6, identity loss. Sometimes after marriage, who are you? When we go to the hospital, they call us like mom or dad, right? They don't call us by name anymore. When I had my kid, I was in the hospital. They called dad. I'm like thinking, who are they calling? Who is dad here? There's so many guys here. Who are they talking to? When you go to the maternity ward, everyone is a dad. Everyone is a mom. They no longer call you by name, right? It's an identity crisis. If your marriage is in an identity crisis, if you're just a dad, if you're just a mom, that's not good. God does not want us to be like that. We should be first a wife and a husband that have come together in union, blessed by God, right? And if you're not there, you can change that. And I'm not going through all the references, so we'll close. And if you look at the next one, again, overprotection, or sometimes you're making an idol out of your child. It becomes child cannot be corrected. I'll give you an example. 3 days ago or 4 days ago, Joey ran into my wife and hit her really hard, not on purpose, but the elbow, and she was crying in pain, and probably she hit or maybe just spanked Joey or something. Joey came crying. I was upset. I was in the meeting or something. I came. I heard about all these things, and I came. And I immediately took Joey, and then I started consoling him, and I was like, oh, what happened? Oh, this happened, that happened. And I was very upset with my wife. Why did you do this? And I didn't even care about, at that, I'm just giving you my real thing, right? What happened? And I didn't ask her how she was feeling or if she was okay or anything. And I just went through the day, and I was very upset that this is what happened. You shouldn't have done that. But when I look back at it now, right? How should I have addressed that situation. I should have asked her, are you hurt? Are you okay? But I haven't done that. What did I do? I prioritized my son over my spouse. And God does not like it. Right? These things will happen. I'm not saying we know the word so mistakes won't happen. That's not like that, right? Mistakes do happen. But do we have time to go back and revisit this and understand these situations and dig deeper to ensure this is not a recurring theme? Because if I don't learn the message now, if I don't understand this now, eventually this will continue at a point where I and the kids might become one, and then maybe I don't respect my wife, or we don't respect my wife together, right? And that would be not pleasing the God, right? So we don't want that to happen. So this is not acceptable. So in your life, I don't know, each of you would have different scenarios in your life, right? So always remember the priority in your handout over there. God is your priority. Right? Make sure you prioritize God in everything, and make sure whatever you do, you're doing this to please Jesus. That's your primary goal. And after that, make sure you prioritize your spouse. Take her into account, take him into account in everything that you do. You're together, you're one. Don't think that you're two. You may have two paychecks. Doesn't matter. Those are all the worldly things that we have created for ourselves, right? 100 years ago, there were no paychecks. 100 years from now, maybe there won't be any paychecks. We don't know. We're just passing through this time. Logistics are different, right? So remember that you are one and function together as one. Because when you function together as one, the most benefited folks will be your kids. When you operate as two, that's going to be a disaster for them, which you will have to witness for the rest of your lives. It's not good, right? God did not bring us together for that. Finally, to the closing, we talked about it, right? We talked about the physical union, the spiritual union, and the mental union, right? And there is a graph over there just to show how it works over a period of time. In closing, I just want you to look at this graph here. So each of these lines represents a different thing for different people. That's why I didn't color code them. Because for someone else, maybe your physical union was great, it started great, went down, and it's coming back up. Maybe mentally, it went up and then it came all the way down. Spiritual union, there was none, and then maybe you're gradually building on it. So this graph will look differently for everyone. But your goal is to keep these three lines at 5 continuously, which is, I know, almost impossible, right? I'm asking you to win Olympics. It's not going to happen, right? But goals can always be bigger, right? They say like we should aim for the stars and you probably land on the moon, kind of a thing, right? So let's have a goal to prioritize our spouse. At least try for 1 week, because sometimes we forget and then the next message is going to be next week. For this 1 week, pay attention to everything that you're doing. My assumption is that you're already prioritizing God, so I'm not talking about it, right? For the next 1 week, if you can focus on your marriage, try to understand your spouse. Try to go through these handouts. Take them home. Read. What is your responsibility as a wife in your marriage? What is your responsibility as a husband in your marriage? How do you please God? How do you please people for their own benefit? How do you not focus on pleasing yourselves? Right? How do we be humble? And how do you submit yourself to your wife? Probably, wives hear this a lot, right? Submitting to your husband is easy. But believe me, as a husband, submitting yourself to the wife is not so easy, right? But God never said it's going to be easy, right? But Jesus submitted himself for us, right? He gave his life for us. He could have said, I'm God, like who are you? I can do anything. He didn't say that. He was very humble. Even when people were hurting him, he said, God forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. But for us, if someone just does a small thing, the reaction that we have is like intense. We can't take it because we still have a lot of room to grow. If we are seeing things like that, that means we are not at number 5. So that's good. We can work towards that. So my hope and my goal for today is that we have a lot of married couples here. I want you to focus on one another. Be a good husband, be a good wife. Bible has a lot of guidelines for you. And I wish us all success in our marriages, and I ask God to lead us in our lives so that we can become a better spouse starting today. Okay? Thank you.